The fragrance of smoldering cedar and damp earth saturated the ceremonial clearing, clinging heavy and rich to the cool mountain air. A constellation of torches ringed the great stone circle, their flames jittering with every breeze that whispered down from the Cascade Peaks. I lingered at the edge of the assembly, half concealed by the broad trunk of a Douglas fir, observing the members of the Stone Creek Conclave. They moved with purpose in their ceremonial best, flowing, forest-toned dresses for the women and for the men, leather kilts and ritualistic paint that traced the lines of their muscles. The annual mating rite was the most sacred occasion on our calendar, a night when prospective partners were presented to the Alpha and his council, when destinies were forged and lifelong unions were sealed. And I was not supposed to be there. "Alara, stop lurking and come help me with these tinctures," my Aunt Isolde hissed, her gaze flicking nervously toward the center of the circle where Elder Maeve was arranging sacred objects on a granite altar. I reluctantly emerged from the shadows, smoothing the front of my simple linen dress. It was a borrowed thing, a size too big, unlike the gowns of other women my age, which were adorned with intricate quillwork or beading that displayed their artistry. The cousin who had lent it to me had found her mate in last year's rite and was now expecting her first pup. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered, taking the tray of herbal tinctures from Aunt Isolde's calloused hands. "My son, Leo, is already asleep, and everyone knows I'm not a candidate." My aunt's severe expression softened just a little. "You are 22, Alara. All unmated adults of age are required to attend. It is the Conclave's law." The Conclave's law. The two words that had dictated the course of my life. The words that had branded me as an outsider from the moment of my birth. In a society where physical power and flawless transformation were paramount, I was a deviation. The wolf who could not complete her shift, whose transformation was a fractured, agonizing process that left me trapped in a state between woman and beast, a true member of neither world. And worse, I was a single mother, a constant reminder of a young mate lost too soon, leaving me with a child to raise alone in a pack that valued paired strength above all. "They only want me here to serve," I said under my breath, arranging the vials as I had been shown. "No one expects the Alpha to choose a flawed wolf with a son as his mate." Aunt Isolde's hand clamped down on my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Do not ever use that word," she commanded in a low, fierce tone. "Your mother would have—" "My mother isn't here," I interrupted, instantly regretting the flash of pain in her eyes. My mother, her sister, had died defending me and a pregnant packmate during a skirmish with raiders when I was just a child. The memory of her was a fading watercolor, precious and fragile. Her fingers combing through my hair, her voice promising that one day my differences would be my greatest asset. The only tangible piece of her I had left was the smooth, worn moonstone that hung from a leather cord around my neck, a crescent shard I had worried with my thumb for 15 years. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "I just don't see the purpose in this charade." Before she could answer, a profound silence descended upon the gathering. Alpha Kalen Vance had emerged from his longhouse and was striding toward the heart of the clearing. Even from this distance, his presence was a palpable force. He was tall and powerfully built, with dark hair that brushed his shoulders, and a face that looked as if it were hewn from the mountain itself. He had led our conclave for nearly a decade, thrust into the role prematurely by his father's sudden death. Unlike his sire, who had been mated from a young age, Kalen had never chosen a partner. Year after year, the most accomplished and beautiful women from our conclave and allied packs had been presented to him. Year after year, he had politely declined them all. Some whispered he sought the perfect political merger. Others claimed he was incapable of forming a true bond after witnessing his parents' cold, strategic union. Whatever the cause, His continued solitude was a growing anxiety among the elders, who fretted over the line of succession. "It is beginning," Aunt Isolde whispered, giving me a slight push toward the back. "Stay here, keep your head down, help with the ceremonial mead when you are called, and then we can slip away." I nodded, thankful for her pragmatism. As she moved to take her place among the council members, I retreated further into the shadows, watching the rite commence. Elder Maeve, our conclave's spiritual guide, lifted her wrinkled hands toward the full moon hanging like a silver coin in the indigo sky. On this hallowed night, when the Moon Mother blesses us with her complete light, we gather to uphold the ancient traditions of our people. Her voice resonated, surprisingly potent for her age. "Tonight, we present our most worthy daughters, so that our Alpha may find among them a fitting mate, a Luna to stand by his side and fortify our conclave." One by one, the 7 eligible women stepped forward, each more striking than the one before. I knew most of them. Seraphina, the daughter of our war chief, whose silver blonde hair shone in the firelight. The twin sisters Daria and Lena, celebrated for their beautiful voices. Elena, whose lineage held the most gifted healers in our territory. 2 others were from neighboring packs, their presentation a clear political overture. And then there was Seraphina. My throat constricted as she moved into the light. Tall and willowy, with hair like spun moonlight and eyes the color of whiskey, she was the undisputed favorite. She was not only breathtakingly beautiful but also one of our fiercest warriors, with the purest wolf form and a bloodline almost as esteemed as the Alpha's own. We had been friends as children, inseparable for a time, until she'd learned that associating with the pack's weakest member would tarnish her own rising star. The last time we'd had a real conversation, she had made her opinion of me painfully clear. "You are a weight on this conclave, Alara. They only tolerate you because of what your mother did." Her words had been a deeper wound than any physical injury, because they mirrored the darkest thoughts I harbored about myself. I was so absorbed in the painful memory that I didn't see Elder Maeve gesturing for the mead until Aunt Isolde materialized beside me with a sharp poke. "The mead, Alara, now!" Flushing with embarrassment, I hurried to the granite table where the ceremonial goblets were arranged. 7 of them, 1 for each potential mate. My task was simple. Fill each goblet with the sacred mead, a potent brew of fermented honey and herbs said to reveal a person's true spirit to the Alpha. As my hands trembled, I lifted the heavy ceramic pitcher, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes that had turned in my direction. I could hear their hushed whispers, feel the blend of pity and contempt in their stares. The broken one, the one who can't shift. Poor thing. And with a child, too. I clenched my jaw and concentrated on my task, pouring the golden liquid into each vessel without spilling a single drop. This, at least, I could do right. As I reached the last goblet, Seraphina's, I sensed her approach. She stood so close I could smell the expensive floral oil she wore. "Try not to make a spectacle of yourself tonight, Alara," she murmured, her voice a venomous whisper. "Better yet, just vanish after you're done. No one wants you here anyway." I kept my eyes lowered, focusing on filling the goblet to the precise ceremonial line. "I am only doing what is required of me," I replied quietly. She let out a soft, condescending laugh. "As if you could ever do more." With a final dismissive glance, she took her goblet and glided away, rejoining the line of candidates. I set the pitcher down, my chest tight with a familiar ache. A part of me screamed to run, to flee into the forest and find a hidden place to nurse my wounds. But something held me there. Maybe it was my mother's moonstone, suddenly warm against my skin. Or maybe it was the stubborn little kernel of defiance that refused to let Seraphina see how much she had hurt me. The next part of the rite began. Each woman stepped forward to present herself to Alpha Kalen. One by one, they approached his massive carved throne, offering their goblets and reciting the ritual words of consideration. He would take a sip from each, his expression unreadable as he assessed them. I watched, captivated in spite of myself. There was an undeniable magnetism to the alpha, something that commanded attention even when he sat perfectly still. Unlike his father, who had ruled through fear, Kalen led with a quiet authority that felt far more potent. I had never spoken to him. Why would the Alpha have any reason to speak to the pack's most flawed member? But I had watched him from a distance, seen how he mediated conflicts, how he challenged his best warriors, and how he always made time to hear the concerns of the lowest-ranking members, everyone but me. When Seraphina's turn came, a palpable anticipation swept through the crowd. She approached the Alpha with flawless poise, her head high, confidence radiating from her every step. "My Alpha," she declared, her voice ringing clear and true as she offered him her goblet. "I come before you under the Moon Mother's gaze, offering myself as your mate. My strength will be your strength, my loyalty absolute, my womb ready to carry the next generation of our conclave." Kalen's face remained impassive as he accepted the goblet, their fingers brushing for a moment. He took a longer drink than he had from the others, his dark eyes fixed on her face. When he returned the goblet, the barest hint of a smile touched his lips. It was the first real reaction he had shown all evening. My stomach sank. This was it then. After all these years of refusing a mate, he had found one who was worthy. A part of me felt a strange sense of relief. With the right essentially decided, I could leave without being noticed. I started to back away toward the edge of the clearing, already plotting my escape through the trees. And then, it all went wrong. A sudden uproar at the entrance to the clearing seized everyone's attention. Two warriors burst through the crowd, dragging the bloodied figure of a third between them. I recognized them immediately as border sentinels from the eastern ridge. "Alpha!" one of them shouted, his voice strained with urgency. "We were ambushed. The Crimson Fang marauders have crossed the river. At least 24 of them, moving fast toward the main settlement." Alpha Kalen was on his feet in an instant, his powerful body coiled with explosive energy. "How far?" "An hour. Maybe less. They killed Ronan." The warrior gestured to their fallen comrade, whose body now lay still on the ground. The ceremonial grounds erupted into pandemonium. The Crimson Fangs had been our rivals for generations, a brutal and land-hungry pack that had been testing our borders for years. To attack during the mating rite, when our focus was diverted and our defenses were ceremonial, was a cunning and vicious move. "Warriors to me!" Kalen's voice sliced through the rising panic, instantly commanding order. "Council, organize the evacuation of the children and elders to the assembly caverns. Everyone else, prepare to defend the settlement." As the conclave scattered to obey his commands, I stood, frozen, paralyzed by indecision. I was not a warrior. I could not fight. I was not an elder or a council member. In moments of crisis like this, my uselessness was thrown into sharp relief. Aunt Isolde appeared beside me, her hand gripping my arm. "Go to the infirmary and get supplies ready," she ordered. "You can at least help the wounded when they are brought back." She then turned, her eyes finding Leo where I'd left him sleeping in a sheltered nook. "I will take the boy to the caverns. Go." Relieved to have a purpose, I nodded and turned to run toward the infirmary at the edge of the settlement. The pathways were a chaotic scene of wolves running, some already in mid-shift, others grabbing weapons. The sounds of children crying and elders shouting instructions mingled with the distant, menacing howls of the approaching enemy. I reached the infirmary, a long, low-ceilinged building, and burst through the door. Inside, Healer Orla and her apprentices were already in motion, gathering herbs, bandages, and poultices. "Ilara," Orla acknowledged me with a curt nod. She had always treated me with a detached, professional respect. Start grinding willow bark for pain and preparing moss poultices for deep wounds. We'll need dozens. I moved to the herb stores, grateful for the clear instructions. My fingers worked with practiced speed, crushing dried bark and mixing it with honey and spring water to form a paste that would numb pain and prevent infection. I had always been good at healing, perhaps because I understood pain in a way others, with their perfect, seamless shifts, did not. As I worked, the sounds of battle grew closer, snarls and howls echoing through the forest, punctuated by the human cries of command and agony. My hands shook, but I forced myself to focus. This was something I could do. I had prepared nearly 20 poultices when the infirmary door flew open. Two warriors stumbled inside, supporting a third whose leg was mangled. "Raiders from the north flank!" one gasped, helping to lower his comrade onto a cot. "They're trying to encircle the settlement. The Alpha has ordered all non-combatants to the assembly caverns immediately." Healer Orla looked up from setting a broken arm. "We cannot move the severely wounded," she said, her voice firm. "The Alpha said everyone," the warrior insisted. "He's sending a defensive line to protect this position. You can continue treating patients, but anyone who can move must get to the caverns now." Orla's gaze met mine across the room. "Ilara, take the poultices you've made and go. We'll need them at the caverns for the walking wounded who make it there." I hesitated, looking at the crowded infirmary. I could be useful here. "Go," she said, her tone softening slightly. "You'll be of more use there, where there are fewer trained hands." Acknowledging the logic in her words, I gathered the poultices, wrapped them in clean linen, and placed them in a leather satchel. As I slipped out the door, the night air hit me with the coppery tang of blood and the sharp scent of fear. The fighting seemed to be coming from every direction. The assembly caverns were on the western side of our territory, meaning I had to circle the main settlement. The direct path would take me too close to the eastern border where the main attack had begun. I took a deep breath, my hand instinctively closing around my mother's moonstone, and plunged into the woods, following a little-used game trail that skirted the northern edge of our lands. The forest here was unnervingly silent, the usual chorus of insects and night creatures hushed by the nearby violence. I moved as swiftly and quietly as I could, every snapped twig under my feet sounding like a gunshot. If only I could shift, I could glide through these woods as silently as a shadow. But in my human form, I felt clumsy, loud, and terribly exposed. I had gone maybe halfway when I heard it, the distinct sound of movement in the brush ahead. I dropped to the ground, my heart hammering against my ribs. Slowly, I crawled behind a moss-covered log, trying to make myself invisible. The sound grew closer. It wasn't the cautious tread of a packmate, but the confident, heavy stride of one who had no fear of being discovered. Through the ferns, I saw glimpses of dark, matted fur. A shifted wolf, too large and rangy to be one of ours, moving with a predator's purpose. A crimson fang scout, hunting for stragglers like me. I held my breath, pressing myself into the damp earth, praying the wind wouldn't carry my scent to him. The raider paused, his massive head lifting as he tasted the air. For one terrifying second, I was sure he'd found me. His head swiveled in my direction, his eyes glinting in the dark. Just then, a howl erupted from the direction of our settlement. It was the Alpha's howl, commanding and absolute, a summons to his warriors. The scout's head snapped toward the sound. After a moment's hesitation, he changed course, loping away from me and back toward the main fight. I waited until the forest was silent again before I dared to breathe. My body trembled with adrenaline, but I scrambled to my feet. I had to reach the caverns. I abandoned stealth for speed, half running, half stumbling through the trees. The ground grew steep as I neared the western mountains, the path becoming a narrow track winding up toward the cave entrance. I could see torchlight ahead, guards posted at the narrow opening. Ilara, one of the guards, a young warrior named Finn who had always been kind, looked startled to see me. We thought you were with your aunt and son. The infirmary, I gasped, holding up my satchel. Orla sent me with supplies. He nodded, stepping aside to let me enter. Be careful. It's crowded, and people are on edge. That was an understatement. The moment I stepped inside the assembly cavern, the noise was a physical blow. Crying children, elders debating strategy, the low moans of the injured. The massive cavern, which felt cavernous during our winter rites, was now claustrophobic, crammed with nearly 200 pack members. I immediately scanned the crowd for Leo and Isolde. I spotted them near the back, my aunt telling stories to a small group of frightened children, Leo nestled safely in her lap. The relief was so intense my knees almost buckled. I made my way toward a section where the wounded were being gathered. As I passed, I overheard snippets of conversation, most of it centered on the Alpha. He took 20 of our best warriors right at their main force, someone said. It's a suicide run. No, it's a tactic, another countered. He's drawing their fire while our flankers circle behind them. I found an elder with minimal healing experience tending to several injured wolves. I approached her and offered my satchel. I have poultices from the infirmary. The woman looked up, relief flooding her weary features. Moon Mother be praised. We have 3 with gashes that won't stop bleeding. I knelt beside her and began to work, losing all track of time as I focused on cleaning wounds, applying poultices, and binding injuries. This was where I belonged, not in ceremonies, but here, in moments of need, where my steady hands and knowledge could make a real difference. I had just finished splinting a young woman's arm when a stir at the cave entrance silenced the cavern. Warriors were filing in, many of them bloody and exhausted, but their faces were grimly triumphant. The Fangs are in retreat, one of them called out, his voice hoarse. The announcement was met with a wave of relieved cheers and howls. The Alpha led the charge himself. He took down their war chief with a single strike. As the warriors entered, I searched their faces for anyone I knew well, and then he appeared. Alpha Kalen Vance, his massive form blocking the narrow entrance. He was still in his wolf form, a colossal timber wolf the color of midnight, with eyes like burning amber. Blood matted his fur, but he moved with the powerful grace of an uninjured predator. The cavern grew silent as he padded forward, the crowd parting before him. When he reached the center, he shifted. The transformation was so fluid it was like watching water reshape itself. One moment, a wolf. The next, a man, crouching naked on the stone floor. Someone rushed forward with a tunic and breeches, which he pulled on before addressing the conclave. The immediate danger is past, he said, his deep voice resonating off the cavern walls. The Crimson Fangs have retreated, but they will be back. This was a calculated strike. They knew we would be at the mating rite. Murmurs of fury rippled through the crowd. We lost 4 tonight, he continued, his face grim. Ronan, Lyle, Sasha, and Damon gave their lives for this conclave. We will honor them at dawn. For now, we remain here. The wounded, children, and elders will stay in the cavern tonight. All able-bodied warriors will return with me to secure the perimeter. As he finished, his gaze swept over the assembled pack, and for a heart-stopping moment, his eyes met mine. I quickly looked down, the weight of his attention a physical pressure. When I risked a glance up, he was already moving away, speaking in low tones to his second-in-command. I returned to my work, trying to quiet the frantic beating of my heart. It was nothing. A coincidence. Alpha Kalen wouldn't even know my name. The night wore on, the initial chaos settling into a tense quiet. Children slept against their parents. Warriors dozed against the walls. I continued to move among the injured, checking bandages, offering water, and applying fresh poultices. I was bone-weary, but sleep felt like an indulgence I couldn't afford. I was one of the few with any real healing skill in the cavern, and I couldn't rest. It was near dawn when I finally allowed myself to sit, my back against the cool stone wall beside my sleeping son. My eyes burned with fatigue. I must have closed them for just a second, but the next thing I knew, a presence beside me startled me awake. I opened my eyes to find Alpha Kalen sitting next to me, his broad shoulder almost touching mine. I stiffened, instantly awake. Alpha, I stammered, trying to stand. It was improper to remain seated before him. Stay, he said, his voice low so as not to wake Leo sleeping at my feet. It was a command, not a request, and I sank back down, my heart pounding. You're the one who cannot shift, he stated after a moment. It wasn't a question, and his tone held no judgment, merely fact. Still, shame burned my cheeks. Yes, Alpha, I whispered, staring at my hands. To my astonishment, he made a low sound that might have been a chuckle. And yet, you've treated more of our people tonight than any of our warriors. Healer Orla said you have the steadiest hands she's ever seen. I looked up, shocked that Orla would speak of me to the Alpha, let alone praise me. I just did what was needed. His amber eyes studied me with an intensity that made me want to look away. What is your name? He asked. Ilara, I said, my voice barely a breath. Ilara Meadowcroft. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Isolde's niece, Anya Meadowcroft's daughter. I nodded, amazed he knew my mother's name. She had died so long ago and had never been high-ranking. Your mother saved my cousin during the river skirmish, he said, as if sensing my thoughts. She was a brave woman. Thank you, I whispered, my fingers finding the moonstone at my throat. His eyes followed the movement. He glanced down at Leo, who had stirred in his sleep and curled his small hand around my ankle. A strange softness entered the Alpha's expression. You should rest, he said abruptly, rising to his feet. Dawn is coming, and we will need to move everyone back to the settlement. Before I could reply, he was gone, moving silently through the cavern. I stared after him, my mind reeling. The Alpha had spoken to me. He had known who my mother was. He had acknowledged my work. It was more recognition than I had received in years. Exhaustion finally overwhelmed me. My eyelids felt like lead weights. Just a few minutes, I told myself. I closed my eyes and sleep took me instantly. I dreamed I was running on 4 paws, my wolf form whole and strong, racing beneath the full moon. There was no pain, only the pure joy of speed and power I had never known. And running beside me was a massive black wolf with eyes like burning amber. I woke to the sensation of being carried. For a disoriented moment, I was aware only of warmth, of strong arms holding me against a solid chest, of a steady heartbeat drumming beneath my ear. My eyes fluttered open to the sharp line of Alpha Kalen's jaw against a pale dawn sky. He was carrying me, one arm under my back, the other beneath my knees, as if I weighed nothing. I gasped, and he glanced down. Our eyes met, and a current of awareness, potent and unnamed, passed between us. You're awake, he said, his voice a low rumble I felt in his chest. Yes, I stammered, utterly mortified. I'm sorry. You can put me down. I can walk. He didn't slow his stride. You tended to our people all night without a moment's rest, he said simply. Allow someone to care for you now. I wanted to argue, but the words caught in my throat as I became aware of our surroundings. We were at the head of a procession moving back to the settlement. Warriors were helping the wounded. Parents were carrying sleeping children. A trusted guard I recognized as his second-in-command was carrying Leo just a few steps behind us, my son still fast asleep. And everyone was staring at me, cradled in the Alpha's arms as if I were something precious. I saw their expressions: shock, confusion, and in some cases, open resentment. Near the front, I saw Serafina, her beautiful face a mask of furious disbelief as she watched us. Alpha, please, I whispered urgently. People are looking. This isn't proper. A small smile touched his lips, though he kept his eyes forward. I determine what is proper in my conclave, Ilara Meadowcroft. The way he said my name sent another shiver through me. I fell silent, too exhausted and bewildered to argue. I allowed myself to relax against him, to let my head rest on his shoulder. It had been so long since anyone had offered me comfort or protection. As we neared the settlement, the damage from the attack was visible. Torn open cabins, bloodstains on the packed earth of the common grounds. Alpha Kalen carried me directly to the small cabin on the edge of the settlement that I shared with Aunt Isolde and Leo. I was stunned he knew where I lived. "Thank you," I said softly as he set me gently on my feet at the door, "for carrying me." His amber eyes held that same unnerving intensity. "Rest today," he said, ignoring my thanks. "There will be a service for the fallen at sunset. Then, we will resume the mating rite." I blinked. Resume the rite? After all this? A shadow crossed his face. Especially after all this, the Crimson Fangs attacked to disrupt our most sacred tradition. To allow them to succeed would be a sign of weakness. He paused, his voice shifting to a tone I couldn't decipher. Besides, I had not yet made my choice when we were interrupted. With that cryptic statement, he turned and strode away, leaving me bewildered on my own doorstep. Inside, the cabin was empty. Aunt Isolde must have taken Leo to get something to eat. I was grateful for the quiet. I stripped off my soiled dress and washed myself as best I could. Every muscle ached. As soon as I was clean, I collapsed onto my cot and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I woke to Aunt Isolde shaking my shoulder, her face a strange mix of worry and excitement. "Ilara, wake up. The memorial is in an hour and then the rite will continue." I sat up, groggy. Why are they continuing? Shouldn't we be reinforcing our defenses? "The Alpha has spoken," she said simply, "and many feel that completing the rite, securing a Luna for the conclave, is the best way to strengthen our position." She moved to our small wardrobe and began pulling out garments. "You need something better to wear than that old linen." I frowned. "Why? I've done my duty. No one will be looking at me." She turned, her expression unreadable. "Ilara, do you not grasp the meaning of what happened this morning?" "What do you mean?" I asked, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. She sat on the bed beside me. "The Alpha carried you. In front of the entire conclave. He could have woken you. He could have assigned a warrior to help you. Instead, he chose to carry you himself." I shook my head, not wanting to understand the implication. He was just being kind, because I helped with the wounded. Aunt Isolde sighed. "My sweet, naive girl. Kalen Vance has never been known for public displays of kindness, especially not toward—" She hesitated. "Toward flawed wolves." I finished for her, the old bitterness rising. "Toward anyone of lower rank," she corrected sharply. "He maintains his distance. It is how he commands respect. Yet this morning he carried you as if you were precious to him." The words sent a shockwave through me, awakening a fragile hope I had long ago buried. I ruthlessly stamped it out. "You're reading too much into it." She sighed again but returned to the wardrobe. In the end, she produced a dress I'd never seen, a simple but elegant gown of deep forest green. She admitted she had been saving it. It fit perfectly, clinging in a way that hinted at curves my usual shapeless tunics concealed. "Your mother would be so proud," Aunt Isolde said softly as she helped me with the ties. "You have her quiet strength, the kind that endures." I blinked back tears and hugged her. "Thank you, Aunt Isolde, for everything. The memorial was a solemn affair in the central clearing. As Alpha Kalen spoke of sacrifice and courage, I stood at the edge of the crowd, my eyes on the 4 funeral pyres. The loss was a dull ache in my chest. As the ceremony ended and the pack began moving back toward the ceremonial grounds, I hesitated. My duties were done. I had no desire to watch Serafina be chosen, but Aunt Isolde's hand on my arm guided me forward. "You need to be there," she said quietly. "Trust me." The grounds had been restored. The 7 candidates stood in their places, though their gowns now bore small tears and stains from the previous night's chaos. Even Serafina's flawless facade was slightly cracked. I found my spot at the very back of the crowd, my son Leo holding tightly to my hand, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and sleepiness. Elder Maeve stepped forward. "Last night our sacred rite was desecrated, but we stand here now, unbroken. The mating rite will conclude, and our Alpha will choose the Luna who will stand beside him." She turned to Kalen, who sat on his carved throne, his face a mask. "Alpha Vance, have you reached your decision?" A heavy silence fell. This was the moment. I held my breath, my heart hammering. Alpha Kalen rose. "I have," he said, his deep voice carrying across the clearing. He moved forward, walking past the line of candidates without giving them a single glance. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd as he continued on, past the front rows, his amber eyes scanning the faces as if searching. And then, to my utter disbelief, his gaze found mine. He began walking directly toward me. Whispers erupted around him, but he seemed not to notice. I was frozen, certain this was a mistake. He must be heading for someone behind me, but there was no one. I stood alone at the very back, my small son clinging to my leg. Alpha Kalen Vance was walking straight for me. He stopped before me, so close I had to crane my neck to look up at him. The entire conclave was silent, watching. "Alara Meadowcroft," he said, his voice low but carrying in the stillness. "Your courage last night, your dedication to our people, your quiet strength, these are the qualities I seek in a Luna." I stared at him, my mind blank with shock. "Alpha, I don't understand." A small smile touched his lips. "I am asking you to be my mate, Alara. My Luna." The world seemed to spin. This was impossible. Me, the broken wolf, a single mother, being asked to be Luna of the Stone Creek Conclave. "But I'm flawed," I whispered, the word escaping before I could stop it. "I can't shift. I would give you weak pups. The Conclave would never accept me." Something in his eyes hardened. "Never describe yourself that way again," he commanded softly. "Your shift has no bearing on your worth. As for the Conclave, they will accept my choice." He then looked down at Leo, who was peering up at him with wide, curious eyes. His expression softened. "And a true pack protects its young, no matter their blood. A strong leader provides for all his people." From the corner of my eye, I saw Serafina's face, a mask of pure fury. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "There are so many others more suitable." He reached out and his fingers brushed the moonstone at my throat. The touch sent a jolt of warmth through me. "Because when others panicked, you healed. When others sought safety, you ran toward danger to help the wounded. And because from the moment I carried you this morning, I knew in my soul that you were meant to be mine." The conviction in his voice, the certainty in his eyes, cracked open the fortress I had built around my heart. Could he truly want me, with all my flaws, with my son? I looked down at Leo, then back at the Alpha. My son deserved a future where he wasn't judged by my perceived weakness. Maybe this was the way. "Yes," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Yes, I will be your mate." You're Luna." A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Kalen's face broke into a genuine, breathtaking smile. Before I could process what was happening, he had swept me into his arms, lifting me as easily as he had that morning. Aunt Isolde stepped forward, her face beaming with tears, and gently took a bewildered Leo from my side. "Alpha, what are you doing?" I gasped, aware of every eye on us. "Tradition," he murmured, his eyes twinkling. "The Alpha carries his chosen mate to complete the rite." As he walked back through the parted crowd, I saw the shock, the disapproval, but also, on some faces, a dawning respect. Seraphina's eyes promised a reckoning. I tightened my arms around Kalen's neck, a sudden fear rising. "They don't approve," I whispered. "This will weaken you." His arms tightened. "Let me worry about that." He sat on the throne with me still cradled in his lap. Elder Maeve approached, her expression neutral, and offered him the ceremonial goblet. He took a sip, then held it to my lips. The mead was sweet and warm. "With this drink, the Alpha and his Luna begin their bond," Maeve intoned. "May the Moon Mother bless their union." I expected him to set me down, but instead, he shifted me more comfortably against his chest. My head came to rest naturally on his shoulder, the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart, and the sheer exhaustion of the last day washed over me. My eyelids grew heavy. "Rest," he whispered, his lips brushing my hair. "I have you." "I can't," I murmured, horrified. "The whole conclave is watching." "Let them watch," he said simply. "Let them see their Alpha cherishes his Luna's well-being above all else." His words were my undoing. As Elder Maeve continued the ritual blessings, my consciousness drifted. The last thing I heard were the astonished whispers rippling through the crowd. She fell asleep on his shoulder, during the rite. But louder than all of them was Kalen's voice, a low rumble against my ear. "It means she trusts me completely. And that, my conclave, is the greatest strength a Luna can offer her Alpha." I woke slowly, enveloped in warmth and the scent of pine and old leather. The bed was impossibly soft, the fur blankets a luxury against my skin. I kept my eyes closed for a moment, piecing together the fragmented memories. The attack, the cavern, Kalen carrying me, his shocking choice, falling asleep in his arms. My eyes flew open. I was in a large, rustic room I had never seen before. Sunlight streamed through a wide window overlooking the valley. The bed was a massive creation of dark carved wood. A fire crackled in a stone hearth across the room. I was in the Alpha's private chambers. A sound drew my attention to a heavy armchair where Kalen Vance sat watching me, his amber eyes intense. He wore simple dark trousers and a tunic, but looked no less commanding. "Good afternoon," he said, his deep voice sending a shiver through me. "You've slept for nearly a day." I stared at him, horrified. "A day? In your bed?" A slight smile touched his lips. "You needed it. Your body needed to recover." I clutched the furs to my chest, realizing I was still in the green dress. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. "This isn't right. We haven't completed the bond." "No, we haven't," he said, rising and approaching the bed with a predator's silent grace. "That is a choice we will make together, when you are ready." "The conclave must be in an uproar," I said. "First you choose me, then I fall asleep, and now this." He sat on the edge of the bed, his presence a palpable heat. "The conclave will adjust to many new things," he said, his tone dismissive of their opinions, including the fact that their Alpha and Luna are rewriting a few outdated traditions. "Luna," I echoed the word. It felt like a costume I didn't know how to wear. "I still don't understand why. There will be consequences for choosing someone like me." "Someone like you?" he repeated, a note of sadness in his voice. Alara, do you truly have no idea of your own worth? I looked down, unable to meet his gaze. I know what I am to this pack. The broken one. A burden they tolerate out of respect for my mother. His hand came up to cut my cheek, his touch gentle but firm, tilting my face to his. Is that how you see yourself? Because it is not how I see you. How can you see me differently? I whispered. He shook his head. I see the woman who walked through a forest filled with enemies to bring medicine to the wounded. I see the healer who worked all night with more skill and compassion than anyone in my conclave. I see the woman who has endured years of being ostracized without becoming cruel. His thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't known had fallen. Your inability to fully shift is not a flaw, Ilara. It is simply a part of you. It has nothing to do with your strength as a wolf, a healer, or as my Luna. I wanted so badly to believe him. They will never accept me, I said, especially not after I slept through my own ceremony. To my surprise, he chuckled. Actually, many saw it differently. They saw a Luna so secure with her alpha that she could surrender to his protection. There is power in that kind of trust, Ilara. He grew serious again. Though I will not deny there are dissenters, Seraphina and her allies, chiefly. But they will learn, or they will find a new pack. The casual threat should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel protected. Why me? I asked again, needing to understand. Why choose the pack's biggest liability? Kalen was quiet for a long moment. I have been watching you for years, he said finally. At first, it was out of a debt to your mother. But the more I watched, the more I saw someone extraordinary. I saw you helping the elders without being asked. I saw you teaching the pups which herbs were safe, even when their parents called them away. I saw you endure the whispers with a quiet dignity I have never seen in anyone else. His hand moved to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. And despite it all, you remained kind. That is rarer and more valuable than any perfect shift or political alliance. I swallowed hard. You never spoke to me. Regret flickered in his eyes. Because I am Alpha. My attention brings scrutiny. To single you out would have made your life harder. I had to wait for the right moment, when I could not just acknowledge you, but elevate you to your rightful place. The mating right, I breathed, understanding. He nodded. I had planned to choose you all along. When the fangs attacked, I was terrified I had lost my chance. But seeing you in the cavern, so calm and competent amid the chaos, only confirmed what my heart already knew. And what was that? I whispered. His eyes held mine, the amber depths full of an emotion I was afraid to name. That you are my true mate, the one the Moon Mother intended for me all along. The words hung in the air, a sacred, impossible truth. I have known since I first caught your scent 3 years ago at the Spring Festival. But you were young. I had to wait until you were ready to stand beside me, not just as a mate, but as Luna. But my shifting, I began, the old insecurity a stubborn ghost. Is irrelevant, he cut in firmly. It has nothing to anoint with our bond. Some of the greatest Lunas in our history had unique challenges. Those stories were suppressed by my father's generation, who believed strength was only measured in battle. He took my hands in his. That is not the conclave I will lead. I need a Luna who embodies all forms of strength to help me build our future. The conviction in his voice was a balm on old wounds. There will be resistance, I said, thinking of Seraphina's enraged face. A dangerous smile played on his lips. Let them try. And what if I'm not ready? I asked, my voice steadier now. To complete the bond? His expression softened instantly. Then we wait. You are Luna of the Stone Creek Conclave. The physical bond can wait until you are ready. You would be that patient? I have waited 3 years to claim you, he rumbled, the sound sending heat through me. I can wait a little longer for you to claim me. The idea that I had a choice, that my readiness mattered, was revolutionary. I don't know how to be Luna, I confessed. You know how to care for people, he said gently. The rest can be taught. The qualities that matter, you already possess. He lifted my hand and pressed a kiss to my palm. You will not be alone in this, Ilara. I will be beside you. As if summoned by his words, a commotion erupted outside. The door burst open without a knock. Serafina stood there, her face a mask of fury, flanked by her father, a council elder, and 2 other warriors. This farce has gone on long enough, Kaelin, her father snarled. The conclave will not accept this mockery. Kaelin rose, placing himself between me and the door. You forget your place, elder, he said, his voice dangerously soft. You would make that broken thing our Luna? Serafina spat, her hateful gaze landing on me. She can't even shift. She'll bear flawed pups and make us a laughingstock. Her words stung, but something else rose in their place. Anger. Not just for me, but for anyone ever judged and found wanting. Before Kaelin could unleash the growl I felt building in his chest, I stood and moved to his side. My shift has nothing to do with my worth, I said, my voice clear and steady. And if you believe a pack's only strength is in its warriors, then perhaps you are the one who does not understand our traditions. Serafina's eyes widened in shock. She had expected me to cower. You dare? She hissed. I felt Kaelin's pride like a warm cloak. I have served this pack in ways you have never seen, I said, meeting her gaze. I have tended your wounds and taught your children. Healing takes a strength you know nothing about, Serafina. A strength this pack needs. The Alpha has chosen, Kaelin cut in, his voice ringing with absolute authority. And his conclave will respect that choice, or they are free to leave. The ultimatum hung in the air. Undeniable. Serafina's father paled, realizing he had lost. As they backed out of the room, Serafina's eyes met mine one last time, filled with hatred, but also a flicker of uncertainty. Serafina, I called softly. She paused. Your strength is still an asset to this pack. I hope you will use it to protect our people. She didn't reply, but I saw her shoulders slump slightly before she disappeared. As the door closed, I let out a shaky breath. Kaelin's arm came around my waist, supporting me. That, he said quietly, is why you are my Luna. Even when facing an enemy, your first instinct is to build a bridge, not a wall. He led me to the chairs by the fire. I am still afraid, I confessed, resting my head on his shoulder. Do you remember falling asleep during the ceremony? He asked. I groaned. You trusted me, he said. Completely, in front of everyone. That, Ilara, is the truest strength. His fingers found my mother's moonstone. She once told me that real power is not in domination, but in protection. Not in the harm you can inflict, but in the healing you can offer. He cupped my face, his amber eyes searching mine. I didn't choose you in spite of your shift. I chose you because of who you are. The mate who will balance me, challenge me, and help me build a conclave our people and our children deserve. In that moment, I finally believed him. I believed in myself. I reached up, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. And what if I said I am ready now? I whispered. Ready to complete our bond. His eyes darkened. Are you certain? He growled. In answer, I leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss of tentative hope that quickly deepened into a fire of certainty. His arms tightened, pulling me onto his lap. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I rested my forehead against his. I have spent my whole life waiting, I said softly. Waiting to be seen. Waiting to belong. I don't want to wait anymore, Kaelin. The smile that lit his face was like the sunrise. "Then let us begin," he said, rising with me in his arms and carrying me toward the bed that would now be ours. Our future, together. Luna Ilara of the Stone Creek Conclave. As he laid me on the soft furs, my mother's moonstone gleamed between us, a crescent promising the fullness to come. And as his lips found mine again, I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that I and my son had finally come home.